pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, can we have Pastor Robin from St. Luke's come on up and open us up in prayer? And your microphone is on, so you're all set.
Thank you. Let us pray. Holy God, we thank you for this evening and for this chance to come together and to hear about the business of the township. We thank you for the faithful leaders that have been lifted up and for those who are attending tonight to voice support and concern. We ask that it would be your wisdom that is here with us this evening and that you would guide and direct us in all that we do. As we approach the celebration of our nation, we ask that you would continue to protect all of those who offer themselves for the freedom and protection of this country. We return all of this to you in the name of our God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, number 2, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda is submitted.
Hold on 1 second, we got to.
I just need to amend it. I passed the sheet to each one of you for 8C. I just want to amend that to accept the proposal from Dennis Jenkins instead of Mannequin Smith, and I'll explain it when we get down to that.
Mm-hmm.
What? No, I mean the thing that was laying on her desk?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was emailed out, but we weren't sure if everyone would get it, so we laid it on the desk also.
Okay, thank you.
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Support?
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hershberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 3, consent agenda. The agenda committee reports. A, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the minutes of the June 19, 2018 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, the committee recommends to the full board to appoint Diane Bernath to the Grant and Loan Committee for a first term ending 12/21/19. C, the full board would like to congratulate Fire Marshal Ron Whipple on his retirement, and the committee recommends to the full board to accept his letter of retirement from the Bedford Township Fire Department effective June 29, 2018.
Motion to approve as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Ms. Stenneberg?
I just have a question. Is this all that we're doing for Ron Whipple? After having served for 43 years?
I believe they're having something at the fire station for him.
But the
Right.
board's not doing it?
Is the board invited? I don't know.
No, this board.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Is that what
I
you're
have a
asking?
proclamation for the next agenda that he'll be able to attend. He couldn't attend this meeting.
Okay, so we are going to give a proclamation. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hershberger votes aye. Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 4, presentations. Update on the Beecher Samaria Transmission Line Project. Adele Pescaris, ITC, a Fortis company. Come on up. She's handed out packets
you.
for everyone, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Adele Pescaris. Thank you to the board and Supervisor Peroni for having me tonight. I wanted to give a little presentation on our Beecher Samaria transmission project. First of all, I don't know how many are familiar with ITC. We're the nation's leading electric transmission provider. And we own, maintain, and operate the high voltage transmission towers and the lines that you see on the sides of the highway. And we're currently in 8 states in the Midwest. We're headquartered in Novi, Michigan. And since our formation in 2003, we have invested over $3.5 billion in the modernization of the electric grid. The project that I wanted to briefly cover is Beecher, Samaria. It's actually a rebuild of an existing transmission line, and it's a 22-mile rebuild. And I believe 5 miles will be in Temperance. It's a 138,000-volt transmission line, and the project will improve the reliability of the electric grid in the region and also the security. The construction is scheduled to occur in October of this year, and the entire project will be completed by the end of 2019. We're also, for the last quarter of the year, we're installing optical ground wire. And we are currently working with the Road Commission from Monroe County, Lenawee County. We're working with Drain Commission to obtain all the permitting necessary. And we will just keep updating you. Our project profile is available on our website, www.itc-holdings.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I also have some customer line cards if anybody would like them, if you have any questions or concerns. Like I said, construction is scheduled to begin in October 2018, and we always try to have the least impact possible. Sometimes if we have any traffic plans, I will share those with the township. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
How do you plan to reach out to homeowners at this point to let them know the project's back on?
So our real estate, our land agents actually already contacted landowners.
Okay, good.
And we're also working with the MDEQ, so we had the listing on the MDEQ website.
Okay, very good.
And so far, I don't believe we've had any complaints.
Any more questions from board members?
Oh, sure.
Ms. Tinderberg?
I mean, all I know is Consumer Energy. Is this Consumer Energy, or are you a separate, different company?
That's a good question. We actually, so we're the transmission part of electricity, so let me just give you a little overview. So we own, maintain, and operate the high voltage transmission lines, and we're connected to the generation source. So the generation source could be a power plant or a wind farm or a solar farm, and that electricity is transported through our lines, and then it goes to what's called a distribution station. That's your local Consumers Energy or DTE Energy, because we own the high voltage. So this particular line is 138,000 volts. So it needs to step down, so be lower voltage. And the lower voltage is the distribution company.
Okay.
So we're just sort of the middle of the electric, travel.
Okay, okay, good.
I hope that makes sense.
I have one more. I live in an area that is kind of a bad grid or something. I don't know. I didn't get good grades in science in school, so. So we get power outages in Lambertville often. Is this going to help that? Not just for me, of course, but for other people in Temperance and.
We are definitely hoping that's the purpose of this project. So we're replacing all these old wood poles. When it's windy, there's a higher chance for them to fall down, or you'll have down wire. So we're replacing all of those with double circuit steel monopoles. And as a result of this project, we want to increase the reliability and the safety of the electric grid. Typically, those outages that you explained are associated with your local distribution company, but we're hoping as a whole, us having a strong grid and the transmission system, at least of the grid, to help with the reliability and the security of the power.
Okay, next time I won't call you, then I'll call them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, and happy 4th of July.
You could just leave some of them cards on that table.
Oh, sure,
and take
absolutely.
some. Okay, item number 5, public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. Come on up. Thank you very much.
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. In regards to ITC, I've heard, and I'm looking for confirmation, that they're going to be giving money to the community for the work that they're doing here. So my question is, if they are doing so? How much is it? And how is it going to be dispersed? In regards to the EDC issue, I would like to voice concern that there should be caution with this. While I agree that we need to have a direction in these matters, do we also need to be involved with the county EDC? So maybe some discretion here, especially if there's money involved. We also do not want or need another political-based committee with a special interest focus, such as the one that's overseeing the Lewis Avenue corridor. Should we maybe consider divisions under the EDC grouping that would be specified for business, community, and industrial, with each one of them functioning on their own to bring a whole to the township? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, moving on to staff reports. 6A, Assessing Department Report. Alan Matlow, Lead Assessor, come on up.
Excuse me, can I just add a quick, is there going to be an answer to that money question?
I mean, there's roughly $5,000 that they're gonna give for any project in the township that's
Okay.
tangible, such as a sign or anything like that, so.
Okay, well,
It's been on the
no.
table for months, and I think I've said it at the meeting a few times, not saying you haven't heard me, but we
Yeah.
just haven't figured out a project for it.
Okay.
So, yeah. Great question, though, Gail. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. I was asked to come here by Mr. Frederick from the last board meeting in regards to what's going on in the assessing department. The memo has been sent out to each of the board members with a packet for you to do a little homework on your own as well from the MTA. This information was presented to the MTA members prior to the rest of the outside world. I'm here, I'm going to touch on three areas: state, local, state, county, and local. One of the questions that Mr. Fredericks brought up was the possibility of assessor reform. Yes, there's two bills currently in Lansing. There are some dramatic changes that are in each of these bills. They're in the early stages. Where they're going and how they're going to go. Me as an assessor are pretty limited, but you as representatives can contact your state representatives, as the MTA has suggested, in your review. The one concern was about local assessing. Under the information in the packet, there's a possibility it could be gone. It is. There's also a possibility in here that it's going to affect the Treasury as well. The information that we were shared is this has been drawn together for a number of reasons. We have, throughout the state and even in this county, a number of townships that are small. A number of the townships throughout the state are not as doing as well as Bedford as far as economic growth. It hasn't done well for decades. The challenge is getting this work done and completed. Part of this plan, they're looking to create districts and assigning these districts or multiple units to a particular assessor. The other function is accounting assessing, which means the department would have to be established either through the equalization, or here it mentions a director of tax. I'm not familiar if the county has a director of tax. Those people would have to be staffed. In the bill, there's a push for the higher level assessors, level 3s, and dramatically level 4s. The key to this big change, if it's voted in, is mandating. If it's mandated, it has to be funded. Through this bill, or bills that's up there, currently the townships would have the option to opt in, continuing what they're doing if they get it approved through the county or through the state, or go through one of these districts. That's the local side of it right there. Also from the state this year, we received new cost manuals from Marshall and Swift, which has been a dramatic change in our software. We've gone through, we've downloaded it here in the last couple weeks. We had a minimal number of modifications we had to make, approximately 25 parcels. So it was a very good transitional period there. Also coming down are classification codes from the state that we're going to have to address and correct our database to them. That's where it's at with the state. Looking at the county, currently the County Equalization Department has a tax tribunal that's been they're involved in with. A representative or an individual in the county is suing that the Equalization Department is not doing their job. It's going to be interesting to see where this court case goes because it could have ramifications for us, the whole county. There was a meeting here in July that was established, that was in place for all township officials or governmental officials to attend at Cabela's, which was an understanding basic of assessments. The program was put on. It has been canceled, abruptly canceled. No further information on that. The other item here is the GIS. The Monroe County Planning Department had applied for a grant. The grant was to help establish training for the local townships to get involved with the GIS using the system more uniformly. That grant fell through, and my understanding, talking with Jeff Boudre, there is some organization talk through the planning department at the county level. That's all we have there. At the local level, department staffing, past, current, future, the reform, and our area concerns. In the past, when I started, we had 4 full-time members and additional 4 part-time people for assisting us in the daily duties. At that time, we were recommended that we reach 10%. Currently, we have 2 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff, a part-time person who is in transition, and a seasonal person that we brought on. We're trying to hedge the loss of our part-time field person. The seasonal person is only here temporarily. That's where we're at there. As far as the future planning and direction goes, myself and Christine Eichler, who's the full-time staff member, and Kelly are going to be putting a meeting together with Paul, and we're going to strategize where we're headed and what we need to address. One area that we do need to address, that we do have a shortfall in and has been here for a period of years, is the use of the GIS. We have some things that we have to get figured out and straightened out in using this daily. Part of it is retention and staff. We've had GIS people in the past. We do have Jody Rector, who's in the planning department, who's trying to learn it for that side of it. Tonight we have our fire chief here, who's looking at the GIS as well for the needs for the fire department to service the community. I will tell you right now, property inspection, we're out doing what we need to do. We do need a field person, but we're trying to hedge with what we have. Currently, we have approximately 2,500 parcels a year to visit. It's recommended. It's not mandated by the state. If that's mandated by the state, it has to be funded by the state. Approximately last year, we visited 1,530 parcels, new construction. That's consisting of new construction, land divisions, and sales reviews for the township. Yes, we did bring on a field person a couple weeks ago. The individual came in at the right time. Right now, if you're aware of the market right now, it's very difficult to find individuals. The individual I've known for a period of years, I'm not going to lie. He's a professional, and he's out there working with the part-time gentleman we've had, and they're both doing a very good job. But we're still going to need to address this going forward. The land division, right now we've got quite a few things on the projects up in the planning department. It looks like we're going to have a lot of parcels that we need to create. We're moving along with what we have. We do need a person to bring in to the land division side of it, but we've also looked at that as well with probably coordinating that more with the GIS. In the past, in this department that I've been here, a lot of these things were held together by one person or two people. In this department, I don't buy that. Everybody here is going to be cross-referenced or cross-trained and be involved with it. We have enough work for everybody. There's no excuse for one individual holding it all together. We have been on a hole that we're still digging out a little bit, but we got most of that cleared out, and we're moving forward with that. We did pass our last AMR review. We've got that cleared up, so we're set pretty much with the state for the next 4 years, and that's where we're at. There's another number of other issues that have taken place this year. The legislation passed for small businesses. If you filed your personal property statement last year for under $80,000, you won't have to do it again this year. There's been some changes in personal residency exemptions for individuals that are in care homes. So if you have a loved one that's in a care home, you might want to contact us for a little additional information on that, maybe in your advantage. What else? I'm going to take a minute, because I've heard there's some discrepancy about knowing who's in our department. First, Christine Eichler. Please stand up, Christine. Christine came in here about 3 years ago when I came in. When I came in, we realized there was a shortfall with Mr. Raines, who'd been here. Mr. Raines is a great person, love him dearly, great man, he runs his business. But there was a shortfall because of the turnover in individuals we had and the downsizing that took place 10 years ago. She came in, we put our plan together, and we've worked very well for the last 3 years. Next person I'd like to introduce you to is Kelly Elmer. She came in about 18 months. Please step up, Kelly. Kelly is a go-getter, and she's a great person. She's rolled up her sleeves and gone into it every day. She gets in there and dives in. She's had this week off, and I hate to tell you, but there's a pile of stuff on your desk. We love having her. All of us have had our own spats from time to time, but we all grow from it. And I'm very thankful that we have both these ladies. The other person who's not here, he's on vacation, Josh Rosette, is on vacation.
Rozak.
Thank you. Just got married, graduate from University of Toledo, and is spending some vacation time with his family. He came in just a little after Kelly. He rolled up his sleeves, and he's also gone deep into it. We're sorry that he's looking in other ventures, but that's what you have to do sometimes. With that, we brought in Mr. Pete Carey. Pete's well-educated, professional, and he's going out and doing the work for us that we need right now. That's where we are at.
And he was on his own after 1 day of training.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. We know how to categorize the work so that nobody's overstressed. I will be back out in the field with him shortly. It's a learning curve. It's a learning process. And we have so much of it to do that there's enough for everybody here.
Does anybody have any questions for Alan up to this point? Mr. Frederick?
Thanks, Alan. I asked for your report simply because when I saw the information in the Michigan Township paper, I immediately went to the actual Senate bill that was introduced so that I could really understand. Now, the MTA does a good job putting a synopsis together, but the Senate bill itself, when you read it, and we all know that during the process of going before the Finance Committee and wherever else it has to go, there'll be some changes to it, some substantial, some just kind of nitpicks. But there are some timing issues that they're setting forth in here that you will need to put into your strategic plan to assure that you comply. There are numerous discussions about the boards of review and their new duties and obligations, and in fact, they have to be studies done, and they have to go to, parties who are going to be on the boards of review will have to go to a lot of seminars. And so all of these things in the actual legislation I would counsel you to, don't pick this up at 11 o'clock at night and try to read it. That just won't work. But I counsel you to look at that if you haven't, and start to put together your strategic plan as to how this is going to go forward. Now, I wouldn't put a lot of work in it because we don't know what the final bill's going to look like. But this is something that the legislature has been after townships for some time. They've been after the clerk's office for elections. They say, why are the local clerks doing this? They've been after assessors because why can't the county do it all? They have been after the finance, treasurer's department, because the treasurer at the county level can collect the taxes. So this is just another step in their attempt to kind of do away with maybe as many as 1,200 townships in a way, because the small ones will never get a level 3 or level 4, so they're going to have to band together, or the county's going to have to do it. So in any event, thank you for your report, and look forward to see how this shakes out in the end, and good luck.
Thank you. The points that you touched on are very important points. There are some people in the state for decades, and I can tell you, as far back as I was 5 years old in the 60s, do not believe we need township governments at all. We do not. That's their feeling. This may be at the start of that reform. The other thing, too, looking at this, I looked at it with somebody else a little different direction. Right now, we're doing pretty good in the economy. When it comes to this township, we're doing pretty good. But this could be the start of early stages of emergency management, whether you want to believe it or not. These smaller units, you get off the major highway 75 or 23, get out into some of these communities. Nothing's happened in decades.
Ms. Tinnery, had a question?
Actually, a comment before my question. Based on Lamar's comment, and actually the report, we have to keep in mind that these are introduced, a Senate bill and a House bill. They've just been introduced. They are not going to pass in, because it's got to be one thing that comes out of it. It's not, we don't have a law that the Senate has and a law that the House has. So I think that I've used this in the past, and I firmly believe that we cannot run off on a sky is falling kind of mentality.
We're not. We're not.
Well,
I'm just saying.
I'm talking about what I'm hearing, please. Can I just comment on what I
go
hear?
ahead.
Because we don't have anything yet. We have 2 bills that have been introduced, and personally, it was long before, well, maybe when Alan was 5, but this has been going on for years and years and years. They've been trying to limit or do away with township governments, clerk's department, assessing department, and where are we? Nothing. No one has ever made any headway in any of that. They all die. We're talking about people here who have an electorate that puts them in office. From what most of us know about politics, these people in the Senate or the House are not going to put through a bill that is going to harm their citizens. And these 2, I've read them, they harm the citizens. They cause a lot more confusion and having to go to the county for everything that you do. People aren't going to want to do that. So my point is, certainly there are 2 introduced bills that we need to have knowledge about, but I don't think we need to move forward on anything until we see that there's something solid. So my question to you, Mr. Supervisor, is are we acting on anything in this report tonight?
Absolutely
No
not.
employee, okay.
I didn't think it was necessary for Alan to be here, to be honest with you, because we've met before. Mr. Frederick brought it up last meeting. I think it's good to update, but it was very early.
Okay.
We meet on a regular basis about our needs, and that's why I wanted him to be here tonight mainly, was to let you guys know the needs.
Okay, I just have a
Now,
question then
not in the future.
of Mr. Allen. You said that when you started, there were 4 full-time workers. What year was that?
I was here in 2004, started in 2004.
2004, and does that include Chris Ranius?
Chris Raines wasn't here at that time. Chris had moved on at that time. He was starting his business.
Alan, can you talk into the
I'm
mic?
sorry.
Pull it up for you.
It was 2004. Mr. Raines was not here. He was already starting his business with other units at that time.
And we had 4 full-time?
We had 4 full-time people here at that time.
Okay,
Yeah, we've been a defunct for a period of years. One was the downturn, we understand that. Like I said, the big thing is, at that time, the recommendation was 10%. Then the recommendation went to 20% and strongly recommended.
okay.
They can recommend all they want, and we'll follow it to the best we can. But mandating, they have to pay for it. The other thing, too, when I first started, we had to have 6 credit hours for continuing ed. Last year, we had to have 20. This year, they backed down to 16. I think there's a lot that's going on.
So that, the 20% you're talking about, the AMAR, the recommendation?
Yeah, recommended visiting of parcels.
And how often does the AMAR?
The AMAR takes, we were 2017, I believe 2022 or 2023.
Isn't it a 5-year?
Five-year cycle. But we're trying to get ourselves there because it is retention of people. These software packages, especially with some of it, is quite difficult. And we have volume here. We have tons and tons. We had almost 1,100 real estate transactions last year. The closest township to us is Monroe Charter, 7,000 parcels. They have an assessor and 2 full-time people there. It's quite challenging every day.
Okay.
But we're in a good community, and we just keep working and plugging away. That's where we're at.
Just the main thing I think Alan needs to update us on is, with the recent employee that quit, we need to fulfill that need of land division. So right now, he's cross-training Kelly for some of that, and we're also looking for somebody. Because we have 2 people right now. Josh is going down to 10 hours a week. He's going to full-time ministry in the fall and school or whatever he's got going on. And so we replaced him, not replaced him, but added a person to keep us in that, 15 homes a week,
We're trying
20 homes a week, somewhere like that.
We're trying to get the bulk of it before Josh leaves, so that we can look how to bring in somebody strategically. We don't rush into this any more than we have in the past. In the past, we trained individuals, and they left quite shortly after. We've been in this continuing education in and out mode for a very long time, and we need to do better than that. We're trying. I mean, we've got 2 good people here right now on staff that we brought in, and we're moving forward.
Anybody else have any more questions? Mr. Francis?
I remember when I first got on the board, I read some articles about the history of townships, when were they formed and why. And I remember reading that the reason townships were created was to assess and collect taxes, period. Everything else they've done
It's moot.
over the years has been added to that, but that was the original purpose. So this is really our primary concern, in my opinion, at this point. And to me, the best way to address this uncertainty is to staff up and meet our own needs and go on and wait for them. Because they always say, well, whatever they mandate, they're going to have to supply. Well, the federal government's a good example of that. They mandate a lot of stuff, and they don't fund it. And it's kind of ironic to me that the state would say, yeah, we want to take it over as a state, and we're going to turn it over to the people in Lansing that can't get their act together to change the insurance on cars? So I just think we need to get our house in order, hire the people that we need to hire, and go on about our business. Make it fair, make it efficient.
Ms. Tenneberry?
Yeah, you mentioned about you're going to have to hire someone. you have the ability to hire seasonal without bringing it to the board, but anything part-time you have to bring to the board,
Oh,
correct?
absolutely.
Okay.
Always do. Always do.
And it's probably difficult to find somebody, if it's part-time, they might be looking for a full-time. Maybe we ought to consider that too when you're discussing strategy.
Well, the one individual that we did bring in to assist with Josh to get this bulk, as much of this as we can, taken care of, we've talked in the past about bringing in that strategical individual or that part-time person that can help us elevate getting to that 20%. But that's something too that we're going to look at. We're a little slower than we used to be on selecting individuals, but we learned we got burned. We got burned bad, and it's the taxpayers' money. And
Anybody else have any more questions for Mr. Allen? I appreciate you being here.
thank you
Really
all
do.
for having me. We will be back. We'll follow this. And I wish you all a happy 4th of July. Just one other note, that it was 242 years ago, basically tonight or tomorrow, that the Declaration of Independence was approved. And the only colony that did not approve it at that time, the information I read, was not on board of the 13 was New York. So have a good 4th.
Thank you. Okay, item 6B, offer for brush truck, which is for sale. Chief Massengill, come on up.
Good evening. First and foremost, I just wanted to voice our appreciation for Fire Marshal Whipple and his retirement, especially my personal appreciation in the guidance he's given me in the last year and a half as I transitioned in. So he's been invaluable, and I appreciate the time he spent, as well as the time before I was here for, I believe, 43 years. We're close to it, so just thank you, Fire Marshal Whipple. Hopefully he's enjoying his retirement. The offer for the brush truck, there was some indications, and if you remember, the brush truck we're talking about is the 1996 truck that's housed at the Temperance Station, I'm sorry, at the Lambertville Station. Last fall, we decided that, or we received board approval to list it with a national broker to see if there was some interest. We know that in about 25 years, there's really no value in it. It's a bit underutilized, so we listed it, and at that time, the board had approved entertaining offers around $20,000. We've had very little interest. We had a little bit this week, but ultimately, we did not get an offer. In speaking with the broker, we opted to leave this item on the agenda. He suggested that perhaps we would entertain offers lower than the $20,000, maybe at $15,000, not necessarily to take it, but to possibly generate some interest in the apparatus. So, in leaving it on the agenda tonight, it ended up being not to bring an offer to you, but just to have some discussion to see if it was something that we would entertain moving forward.
Okay. Questions for Chief Massengill? Ms. Stenberg?
I don't have questions, but why wouldn't we? I mean, why wouldn't we sell it if we can sell it? If it's sitting there doing nothing and just aging,
I agree. Mr. Frederick?
Well, I agree with Ms. Tinbury. If we have an idle asset that's not doing anything, let's just sell it. It's 21 years old. It's time for it to go. And so you said 20,000 didn't work, 15,000 doesn't work, maybe 10. Just to get some offer that's over the table doesn't mean we have to accept it. So just put it out and see what offers we get at any price, and we can review it when it comes in.
Sure, and I don't want to mislead the board to think that it's never used. We still utilize it, but probably not as much as much as what value we may get if we got an offer for it. So I think it would be wise to consider an offer, any offer.
All right.
Do we need a motion for him to be able to go get lower bids than what our previous motion was?
I don't think it would hurt. I don't know if you need it, but.
I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor,
Steiner?
I make a motion that we authorize Chief Messingell to look at offers for the 1996 brush truck in the range of $15,000.
Support.
Okay, motion supported, Mr. Clemens, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 6C, request for approval to accept the Manikin Smith Group proposal to perform GIS services for the fire station drive time project. Chief?
Yes, sir. So included in your packets, there was a proposal. On the second page, there was a sample map that Manikin Smith developed. It's some mapping that details drive time from each of the existing 3 stations based on traffic conditions. What we're looking at doing as part of our strategic planning this year is starting to address long-term fire station needs. We've got some good risk assessment maps that have been developed throughout the years, so we can tell with some reasonable certainty some of the busier areas of the township, but what we have never been able to do and what we're requesting tonight is to develop some mapping that we can overlay over our existing risk assessment maps that will provide us some reasonable drive time assumptions to those areas. We've asked them to look at multiple different models, and we think that in fairness to the board and the taxpayers, we should evaluate multiple models up and including a 1-station model, like a centralized station model, a couple of different 2-station models, and then the existing 3-station model, so that we can make the best decision moving forward as far as a recommendation. It would be a mistake not to look at all options that are on the table or could be on the table in making that decision. So the price that they gave us was for some drive times within the national standards for each of those scenarios. We did check within the township ourselves, and it doesn't appear that we have the ability to do it in any of the departments in the township right now to develop this mapping.
Okay, any questions for Chief? Ms. Tinberry?
Well, it seems to me, and I agree my memory could be waning here, but we have had these before. We have had, Dennis Jenkins did GIS mapping back several years ago with regard to the current stations. I don't know if it was 4-minute drive time or what exactly it entailed at the time, but my question is, I mean, I know we're going to get to this, but the planning department has revised their request to use Dennis Jenkins. Couldn't the fire department use Dennis Jenkins too, to handle this?
I can answer that, Nancy. I asked him,
Oh,
and he said this is not something that he would be able to do. And he actually wrote on that other memo that his license is only for training, and this is not
license.
something that he would be able to do, that Manikin Smith, he would have told the chief if he had asked him to go with Manikin Smith, because they have the capability and they've worked already with some maps for the
Okay.
fire stations.
Well,
So
I
they
know
have a
he did.
basic
I didn't
map
understand about the
already.
license, so, okay, thank you for that.
Mhm.
Then my question, I don't know who this question is to, maybe the members of the Fire Advisory Committee, but I know I missed last meeting. I watched the video and there wasn't anything about a new fire station, so this is the first I've ever heard of a potential single station located at 8100 Jackman Road, or a possible station near the intersection of Lewis and Dean.
Well,
So where did those come from?
in discussing multiple times in the past year that I've been here, there's been discussion about, and we think that it would be a failure on our part to not look at all reasonable options. So one might make an argument that says that a central station would be less expensive than maintaining 3 stations. And you could make that argument if the service delivery didn't suffer. I am not confident that our service delivery wouldn't suffer, but I think that we should look at all reasonable options, so that if nothing else, we could rule that out and say, that's not a good option that we want to have, but we shouldn't just take it off the table and immediately think, no, that wouldn't be something that should be considered. Now, this isn't anything, I don't believe that the department or the fire authority board is looking at that we have the ability to do in the very, very near future, but we are developing a 5-year strategic plan, and we believe that we should start at least having discussions or working towards ideas in this next 5-year strategic plan, so that we can continue down that road, much like the previous strategic plan addressed apparatus needs, even though there was no really funding arm to that when they addressed and developed the apparatus replacement plan. We think we should start addressing it and at least develop some ideas or some concepts now, so that moving forward we've done some of the groundwork for that. Certainly in the next, I wouldn't want to put a time frame on it, but at some time in the future we definitely need to address our station needs with the aging condition of them, and this is just probably the first step in that.
One of my life verses is, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And so from what I've heard from you and your reports and the fire department, and very, very proud of them, but we have amazing response times. And so to begin planning something that doesn't seem to have a need at this point, I mean, I agree that you need to handle your department and the men. I think this board needs to handle any structure or new building or buying property. Do we own property at Lewis and Dean? I don't think so. I mean, I don't even know of any vacant property there. So I'm really, I would not be in favor of looking at new fire stations.
Mr. Steiner?
Well, I have to disagree a little bit and agree with the fire chief here. Yes, things, I mean, what I do every day is, if I use the term, if it's not broke, don't fix it, I wouldn't have a job. We have to look at every stone and turn over every one of them. And what Chief's doing, and I see what you're doing here, is you're saying, we have to look at the what if. And I'm going to tell you the big what if in my mind. There's going to come a day when we have a much tougher time than we do today to get volunteer firefighters. That's a tough job for you every day as it is. And to struggle constantly to make sure that we're trying to be staffed to support our community and protect our citizens, very difficult process. And maybe at some point, that's going to be a full-time fire department. Now, would it be easier to staff a one-house fire department? Again, you're not maintaining 3 different properties or 2 different properties. So now some of that money is going to go into your staffing. You're going to have more full-time opportunities for your employees. And that's the only way you're going to be able to keep this community safe at some point, in my mind. I mean, people may disagree or agree, but I think you're doing the right thing. You have to look at the what-ifs out there. We don't know what the economy is going to bring. We talk about housing and economy. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Same thing with you. You have to look at what's up and down, what the positives and negatives are, what's going to change in the national fire standards, everything else. They may, at some point, someone might say, well, you know, to have a firehouse, you have to meet all kinds of new standards. Well, if they're going to mandate that kind of thing, you've got to be able to make those changes too. So I applaud that part of it. Again, I think it would be very tough, time-wise, to have a central location as one, but there might be something that proves that wrong too, and you're doing your homework.
Yeah, and none of this scenario, we're not advocating for any of the scenarios. We simply feel that we have an obligation to the board and the public to look at different options so that we can bring back options and say, you know, down the road, when we're addressing these building needs, this is what we found to be the best option that fits for the township.
Mr. Francis?
That comment, if it's not broken, don't fix it, is perfect, because 2 of the stations are broken. They're over 70 years old and they need some work. We're not planning to the end of our nose. We're planning years in advance. At least that's the way we should be doing for building needs. I think this is totally appropriate, just to, as the chief has just mentioned, to what are all the options that are available to us. Then we take a look at the best one that we can afford, and we go with it. But we're working for years in advance on this, not next week.
Mr. Frederick?
At the last meeting, the board will remember that there was a rumor in the marketplace that the Temperance Fire Station was going to be closed. That rumor was kind of squashed here, which I think was absolutely important. And at the same time, I suggested, and I think Mr. Francis has said the same thing, let's go back to the Fire Advisory Board and let's look at the utilization of the buildings, what needs to be done, what the cost might be, and bring it back to this board for some review, some direction, and some thoughts. Again, I believe this is just one of the elements that is necessary for us to do a strategic study of the use of the various fire stations and make sure that we are adequately covering our citizens and providing the health, safety, and welfare that we are required to deliver. I think that this is just one element. It's $900. It's in your budget. I think that this makes sense to at least have this as one of the items in the toolbox that we might use for part of the analysis. Thank you.
Okay. No further discussion. I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion this board approve and accept the proposal from Manick Smith to perform the GIS services for Fire Station Drive Time project with a contracted budget not to exceed a total sum payment of the $900.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
No.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Yes, and the motion passed 6-1. Thank you, Chief, for being here. I appreciate it. Have a nice 4th of July. Under old business, 7A, request for approval to retrofit the interior lights of the Government Center and the parking lot with LED lights. Mr. Kirkpatrick, thank you for being here again.
Thank you.
I think
for
we
allowing
got her
me to-
straightened around,
Yes,
so
it was
lay it on us.
helpful. Well, I appreciated the suggestions for the summary sheets, and I trust that you've received those and they've been able to condense what our objective was here, particularly looking at the interior of this building, replacing all of the fluorescent 4-foot tubes, and then as well the other fluorescents with LED. The subtotal of that work here in this building, including the labor, is $9,574.11, minus the rebate of $1,293, so it'd be $8,281.11. Then, just speaking to the exterior of the building, where we will be replacing all of the parking lot fixtures and also wall packs around the buildings, in the back particularly. That cost is $12,694.19, including labor, minus the rebate of $1,102, for a total of $11,592.19. We looked at the energy analysis for payback, and so the average on that payback is about 3 years for looking at the interior of the building, and a little over 3 years for the exterior. Of course, when you have more expensive fixtures, then that is stretched out a little bit further. Nonetheless, you'll be able to realize almost $2,700 a year in electricity and maintenance and upkeep costs, and that will continue throughout 7 years. These light bulbs for the interior are warranted, and 70,000 hours of life that they're expected at only 10 watts each. And then similarly, in the exterior fixtures, where we're coming down from the 250 watt to what we have here at just, I believe there's 68 watts. You can obviously see the amount of electricity that's saved there, and then also the full warranties for 5 years on those products as well from Philips. Is there any question now that we've looked at these again?
I had a question. We got a copy of the quotation from Xyler Electric for some installation work, and I was wondering how that fits in. Is that the labor component that's in your total? It's using them as the labor contractor?
So Xyler shared with you, yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay,
he
it's not in
contacted
addition
me.
to your numbers,
No,
it's
no,
included in.
it
Okay,
is.
that was my concern.
That's the quote he is working through Voss Lighting, right?
Ms. Stenberry?
Is this the only, I know you discussed this somewhat at the last meeting, but no other bids, or what was the?
We have a strict contract with Voss for government pricing. We approved that last time we did the library. We approved that before we approved the library last time.
Okay.
And they actually built a relationship with Xylers through that. So now Xylers does most of their work, so.
Good.
Okay. Any more discussion or questions? Seeing none, I look for a motion. And a good question was asked if this was budgeted for. This was not budgeted in the 2018-19 fiscal year. You know, we're gonna have to look at what item this is gonna come out of, maintenance or, so. Ms. Stenberry?
Move that we approve the contract with Voss Lighting to furnish and install 431 Phillips wire tubes, 4-foot tubes, 45 Lunera 2-pin plugs, and 3 contact LED fixtures for a total of $8,281.11.
Second.
Motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Mr. Frederick?
A friendly amendment that, that you, Voss Electric, will pursue the rebate.
Yes, we will,
Thank you.
all of it.
Agreed.
Accept.
Could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye. And the motion passed 7-0. Thank you for being here. Do you have a time frame of when this work will begin?
Are we also considering the exterior work?
You got the
tonight?
exterior to do.
Yep.
Okay, the excellent. Okay. Yep.
Did I not put that in the motion?
No,
That was just the interior.
Oh, sorry. Can I
they
make a
they ought to be
friendly
separate
amendment?
because they're two
We'll
separate
do them separate.
jobs.
Oh, okay.
You gonna do it?
What?
You gonna take it?
I thought I heard you make them both in the same motion, so.
No, it was
that's
only
what I
one.
thought.
No,
Me
the only,
Okay. I thought that's what you did.
Well,
Okay, I look for
in light
Mr.
of the
Steiner?
fact that I cannot find the exterior, someone else needs to, oh,
Just so
Mr. Chairman,
everybody's-
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept
you.
the bid from Voss Lighting for the parking lot lights replacement, changing them all to LED fixtures. And the net total after the rebate is $11,592.19.
Support.
Okay, motion supported, discussion? Seeing none, could you call?
Friendly-
oh, Mr.
Friendly
Fran-
amendment that they pursue the rebate.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, accepted. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful 4th of July.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item 7B, request for approval to form an economic development committee. Mr. Tim Lake, if you want to come on up.
Good evening.
So we've, I'm sure everybody watched the last board meeting who wasn't here, and we did table it because some thought we should have a full board for this, which I do agree with them. It is an important committee, so if anybody has any questions for Mr. Lake, go ahead. Mr. Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. At the last meeting, I asked numerous questions with respect to how this committee would go forward, because we're a township. And as a result, projects will have to go through the drain commissioner, may have to go through the road commission, has to go through our planning department. In certain instances, may even have to go to Board of Zoning Appeals. So those 4 elements will be part of your toolbox, I'm assuming. But give me some ideas of what else you think are going to be tools in your toolbox, because I was at the county when they tried this, and they were trying to streamline the process by which projects of economic development might move faster. But in every case, it was the drain commissioner would hold it up, or the road commission would hold it up, or it didn't fit in the planning commission in the proper schedule. So tell me some other things, because these groups are still going to be part of your process. Tell me what else goes in your toolbox.
Well, one of the strategies that we've been using on a countywide level to streamline development is to look at a site, understand what its deficiencies might be, infrastructure, as well as other things, and then make sure that we understand what it's going to take. As an example, let's say we have a piece of property that could be industrial development, but it doesn't have adequate supply of water going there, okay? It either has some water, but not enough. We would look at that piece of property and then say, come up with an approximate cost of doing that and find a funding source that we could fund that with when the appropriate time came, when a project actually came down the pike. But what's happening today is with companies, when you don't have that type of information in place, when they're asking for that, they just pass you over. They're going to spend their capital in a community that's ready. And so really a lot of it is around getting sites. As far as the toolbox, when we speak about a toolbox, in a lot of cases we're referring to what type of incentives could be applied, what type of grants might be applied to that. And there's numerous ones. You're very familiar with Public Act 198, okay? So knowing and understanding that the community would accept a 198 on a particular parcel is helpful to market that. Also, infrastructure improvements can be done with community development block grant funds. You've utilized in the past brownfield. That's another tool that I could see utilizing down here, but having that in place ready to go and not waiting for that opportunity where somebody's asking you for that is really hugely important today. There's the business development program at the MEDC, as well as community development program, which are grant programs. Corridor Improvement Authority we've talked about when we talked about maybe some corridor improvement type of opportunities. There's community rehab districts, but these all take a lot of lead time. So understanding that the community is going to accept those type of tools, okay, on a particular piece of property, on a site-specific property, are hugely important. And that's part of the work that this committee would be doing. That our office can't do on our own, quite honestly. We just don't have the staffing for that.
Well, some of the
Working
things
with
too
the
is in state incentives that are offered out, you know, for employees or jobs. You know, I don't know if
Yeah.
I've heard of first
The
100
business
employees
development,
that
that's
you
a business
bring.
development program. Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
you could have
Right.
those. I mean, there's,
Yeah, there's a ton of those, and having those when you're looking at marketing a piece of property is hugely important today. There's communities, quite honestly, that are doing what they call a certified site ready. So they're guaranteeing you that you can walk in, pull a building permit, and start your project. So.
Ms. Staneberry?
Well, I have always been a strong advocate of economic development, and I think this committee is extremely important. I don't think this committee is going to be doing any planning, but we've heard it here from companies that have come to build in Bedford, and I've heard it from many of our local companies that, well, I'll use Fisher Tool and Die, Mike and Karen Fisher. Karen sat with me on the EDC before it was disbanded or disillusion, or whatever, dissolve, not dissolve, whatever, you know. Anyway, she gave us the story of how Fisher Tool and Die expanded. They began all the way from Michigan down to Florida, and they visited many, many sites. They ended up in Tennessee, and the reason they ended up in Tennessee was because when they got on a plane, flew down to the location where they've since built, they were greeted at the airport by representatives from the Drain Commission, the Road Commission, the electric company, gas, the mayor, the college dean that was willing to put forth new curriculum to train these people in tool and die. And they made the decision in that one day because of the coordination of effort, because they saw how important it was to that community. And I believe that this committee, certainly their whole situation had to do with light industrial or tool and die, whatever that's considered. And I'm not thinking that we're going to all just be industrial, but to have a committee separate from our planning department that does not have the time, and certainly any company that would come, commercial or industrial, would have to go through planning. We're not trying to, I don't think that this committee is trying to, you know, cut the process by which our ordinances require, but to be able to have a group meet with new interested development, to me, is essential, because we haven't done anything up like this up to now, and I think that this would be a big advantage. The only thing that I would like to suggest is the makeup of this committee. I think that you'd have to do a lot of selling for me to understand why the superintendent of schools would need to be on this committee. Or I can see the dean of, or the president of the Monroe Community College, because just like I said, they may need to do some curriculum changes to provide training for some of our young people. But there are some classification that was in the presentation that kind of made me wonder, and I would like to see at least one person as a resident in some place along this corridor, that, or Temperance, or between Temperance and Toledo, that has some say and input from just a normal, common, everyday person living in this community that's going to be, hopefully, changed and grow. I think that there needs to be a resident on the committee, rather than just all professional people. But I am totally in support of it. I think we'd be amiss if you want to talk about the future. This is very much needed for the future.
Okay, any more comments, Mr. Frederick?
At the last meeting, I talked at length that a lot of the information that this group would be seeking could be prepared by the Planning Commission in 3 or 4 or 5 days. There are charts all over the upstairs, across the room, where they have zoning, they have the various distribution of our utilities, and so those kinds of efforts are already completed. But I did spend some time talking to Karen, and she said, I don't have time for all of this. I have to get ready for the census. I've got a lot of plans coming through. And so if they ask us for information, we'll try to get it in a reasonable time manner. As Ms. Timbery has suggested, I saw at the last meeting, I saw the parties that you suggest might be on this committee. I would really I'd really want to know what they expect to deliver. I would expect to know what their experiences are that would contribute to this. And I think we need a down-in-the-dirt person who is not necessarily a developer, who's not necessarily anything. I mean, maybe Ms. Timber is right, a citizen who can kind of oversee this from a perspective of why does that make sense? If Karen hadn't told me that they don't have time to do this and spend a lot of time on it, I would have said no. But if we're going to go forward with this, then I'm going to be pretty critical on who the individuals are, who make up this development committee. If we're going to have 16 real estate people on here, then we don't need that. We need some people who are interested in economic development and have some skills related to that. And just what we need, another committee. Thank you.
Comments?
In reviewing the information, I agree a lot has been said. I think I may have taken a different take on the list. I read the list as a spirit of we see the totality of what's necessary in order to push this forward. And I think I appreciated that the group, as it sits right now, thought enough to demonstrate that it's not good enough to have 3 people. Let's put together an economic development committee and run out and attract business. To me, it was detailed, it was thoughtful, it addressed local, community level, high school level, and I thought that was really well done. I do agree with Ms. Tinvieri that we do need citizen representation. And the only other thing that I would encourage, I support the idea, is that as this moves forward, I love the idea that we can pre-certify and get sites ready so that we would have the ability to attract real time. I think that is fantastic. I think part of that, in the spirit of our community, is that we also keep the residents heavily informed and, as best we can, try to encourage and support local support so that when and if it comes time for these votes to fast track different mechanicals through the area, that the immediate community is already informed, aware, and largely supportive, realizing that we're never going to get 100% consensus. But that's all I have.
So that's exactly it, Mr. Clemens. The high-level strategy here is to get these sites prepared and to let decisions be made in advance of an opportunity, so we're prepared when the opportunity comes. So the public is involved in every step of the way. We're certainly, this committee doesn't sidestep that.
Sure.
And to the point, the reason we suggested certain classifications or occupations is because that's what we find makes a well-rounded group. All these people will have a vested interest in the community itself specifically, because if you recall, our presentation called for, these are all volunteers. So asking your superintendent of your high school to be involved in economic development is critical today, to be perfectly honest with you, because talent is a huge component. It starts in our K-12 systems as they're involved and learn more about some of the jobs that are out there. They start to look at their curriculum and opportunities for their students, which is what we want, is to get our students educated for the jobs that are here and not in Chicago or New York or on the West Coast or the East Coast. So
Well, that's the
part
reason.
of the thought process of the committee. We're certainly not opposed to having somebody from the general community to have that voice on there. That's not the idea. The idea is really to get known sites prepared and ready to go. So again, when I have the opportunity to present something, or I'm at a show and can talk to a site developer, okay, or a site consultant about a piece of property, I can safely say that this is what we have available, it's ready to go, it's X number of acres, it has this infrastructure in place, it's suitable for your project.
And I think it also gets over the barrier for a potential site developer or purchasee, is that they already know there's consensus. And I think that's huge. That's absolutely
exactly what
huge
they're
for
looking
someone
for.
who's serious and ready to pull the trigger.
Well, that's exactly why I wanted to bring this committee, is this is exactly what the county is doing, getting prepared for the for the Gordie Howe Bridge. The I-75 corridor study, I'm
Right.
a captain for one of the team pillars, and so I thought it is crucial for us to bring this to Bedford and do it on a smaller level. Mr. Francis?
On your list of occupations or individuals that might serve on that committee, I agree with, they ought to be in the cart. My question is who is going to be pushing that cart? Because I don't see anybody in here that has the skills to do that. Don't we need somebody with some, you are.
I'm pushing.
Okay.
You know, the BDC has a service contract with Bedford Township. We feel it's part of our obligation is to be the spearhead on this. We won't sit on the committee, but we will help lead the committee. We will probably expect some assistance from the supervisor, deputy supervisor from time to time. It'll be the BDC's responsibility to keep these folks moving on task, on target. It's sometimes like herding chickens, but we've been successful with it with the Monroe County Link Plan, to be quite honest with you, and I think we can duplicate that down here with your citizenry and the professionals you have in your community and the citizens you have in your community.
One of the things we do need to talk about, though, we do have an ad hoc committee, a committee that, I don't even want to call it a committee, a group of people that have been together, putting this together for the past 3 months. And going forward, if we approve this tonight, either we utilize the group of people that we already have to make suggestions to the board of who, and continue the work and bring it to the board, or this board can form their own ad hoc committee or whatever who to gather the people. So we do need to figure that out going forward, because we would have to go back and do some work and then, you know, get the word out there of what we're looking for, contact some of these people, because this isn't a board where it's just, you know, I just want to serve to serve. You know, this is, you know, we're aiming for certain people, individuals for this type of board, so. So I appreciate, Tim, your help and your guidance on this. Mr. Steiner?
I won't go over my whole spiel from the last meeting, but I said this has to be a committee that is committed to be there to do something, not just be a board that says I'm a committee that's supposed to be here for economic development. If we are to utilize any of the people that are currently on there, I think we need the list of who everyone is, what their background is, and what they're bringing to the table, and then identify some of these other items as what we expect that person to bring to the table. Going back to the education piece, I do agree with the school superintendent of Bedford, because I think that is a stepping stone from the K through 12 going right into the college. Might keep people going from, you know, Bedford, going off somewhere, keeping them here local, starting at least their first 2 years at Monroe, putting them through that process, might create jobs, and they may end up with their full 4-year degree, then, you know, just going right down the road to UT or, you know, up to Ann Arbor or something close.
And just so you know, Mr. Steiner, we have talked to Dr. Carl and the dean of the college, and they're both very interested.
So, yeah, so I think that'd be a good thing to bring that list together. I know there's a recommendation for members to be for 2 years. I think, as I said before, the EDC that we had years and years ago, again, that's when Mr. Frederick was here, and I made the comment, if they're not going to do something, why do we have them? We might as well close that EDC. So I think we make it for a 1-year term, and let's see what happens. Because if it's stagnant and it's not really doing anything, we either start from scratch and go with brand new blood, or we get rid of it. Or, I mean, I suppose we could say 2 years, and then you could still get rid of it in 1 if nothing's happening, but.
Yeah, I wouldn't go, like you say, if they're not doing nothing after a year, we just fold the daggum thing. But 2 years, you'd want to give them plenty of time to, you know, get the ball rolling. We won't have to worry about 9 reappointments.
But some of the stuff that's open, I would like to hopefully see that we have at least a few people that are interested for certain roles, and let us really dive in and pick from those specific people on those roles, instead of just saying, oh, this is the only person. Well, there's more than one person out there that can do these things. So, and I have confidence to help drive that bus.
We'll drive it as best we can. Obviously, volunteers and busy people are busy, so getting them to give their time up, again, for this, this type of a committee that's an action-based committee, okay? It can be a challenge, but we're certainly open to suggestions. You know, we're not saying that the ad hoc committee doesn't need to pick everybody. If you have a qualified individual that you think will produce, and we'd love to have it.
And you would
Just so
hope
you know,
that,
not one person on the ad hoc committee is in the interest of serving on it. Mr. Weems nor Mr. Jenkins or Mr. Braun have any interest in serving, so.
but if you've got people that are going to take their time, as you said, their free time and volunteer, I mean, you would think that they want to take action. Other than that, why do they want to bother to be there, and especially on an unpaid board?
Right.
You know,
Well, you have to be really strategic with these boards. And a lot of times, people don't have time in the evenings.
That's
A lot
right.
of times, people, during the day, if they're during the day meetings, companies will let their people go to these meetings because they care about them. You know, so we're gonna have to really be strategic on the times we set for these. If they're evening meetings, it cuts out a lot of people. So, yeah, I mean, I do agree, this board should be putting the word out there, looking for people and making suggestions, but, Mr. Frederick?
Well, Rick brought up a point that I had already kind of inked in, and that is, I'd like to see this be a one-year assignment to begin with, and we can always extend it if they're performing. And that way we know for sure that at the end of a year, there's a report that is delivered on, here's where we are, here's what we're doing, and here's where we see we ought to go. And that gives this board an opportunity then to either cut it off if it's not performing, or let it go on. I believe 1 year is something I could vote for. Otherwise, we're going to have them come in every 3, 4, 5 months to tell us where they are, and I don't think that serves a useful purpose either. So I would be willing to support this for 1 year.
Ms. Tinkerberry?
I think 1 year, you're just cutting them off at the knees. I don't know how you can judge the whole process if you're only giving 1 year. I mean, let's face it, this board alone has taken 6 years on board policy, and we still don't have it. And taken 6 years on redoing the personnel. I mean, seriously, you're asking a committee to come up with, I don't know what, some development in 1 year. I think there's a lot of research that has to be done. There's a lot of discussion. I think that it's a 1 year, and I don't know how Tim feels, but I don't know, you know, how long does it take sometimes to work with companies to get them to, you know, set aside all the other, like I said, with Fisher Tool and Die, they met with many, many, many people throughout, you know, down from Michigan all the way to Florida before they ever landed in Tennessee. So, I mean, we're not the only whatever in the sea, fishing, you know what I mean? These people aren't gonna just decide in 1 year that they're gonna come develop here. I think you need more time.
just for clarification, I don't think Tim's talking about saying, I got a company I'm going to develop. This is the toolbox. The toolbox can be developed in a fairly short period with the people that you're looking for. People with expertise in here, believe me, within 6 months, they can put a good plan together. And that's what Tim's looking for, is a plan that we put together. Not to go out and already be immediately ready and say, we've got somebody that wants to come here and we've got it ready to go right now. That part, yes, that is going to be long-term. But Tim's at least looking at long-term. And you could do it similar to like you do a greenfield contract even, you know, if you wanted to. I mean,
Rick, I think you're right. We can work with a year.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just move forward, and if we need more time, we'll extend it. So, you know, the board right now has to decide whether or not how we want to proceed. Do you want to proceed with the same people that have brought this to you right here? Or do you want to change it up? These people that served on this and put this together and presented are willing to continue forward?
Mr. Supervisor, I'll start with a recommendation because we've got to start somewhere. I would say that given Tim's history and success in the county, I certainly don't have a problem if he's weighing in on what that body looks like.
He's at every meeting.
I realize there's a lot of subtleties as to skill sets, reach, inclination, and so I think the quickest and easiest thing would be for the two of you and the committee to come back with a list of what the finished committee would look like and have us vote on it. I think to do anything else, we're almost creating the bureaucracy that we're trying to streamline and get away from.
And through that process, if anybody has any recommendations,
Agreed.
send them,
Provide them.
call them, get them to come fill out an application. I mean, we want as many as we can. It's just like the park board position. When we put it on Facebook, we get 18 applications. I mean, it's, we need to put it out there. We need everybody.
My only request is that if the board agrees and that is the direction that we were to go, if there was any way we could get a periodic update on what yeses and what that board was beginning to shape out and look like, it would be awfully embarrassing to reach out to someone and to ask them if they would like to be recommended for a committee they've already said yes to participate in or on. So,
Or the other side of that too, Mr. Clemens, would be, is you may have two people with an expertise in this area. Why do I want to go ask somebody else that has that same expertise when we've got a couple people already there?
Precisely.
So to know exactly who's doing what and then what's open, and what we need.
And ultimately, it's coming back to this board for a vote
Right.
anyway, so.
Well, two people that have already, like I just said earlier, was Dr. Carl and the Dean of College, Paul Newman, are very interested. So there's two people we could, work towards, or at least get applications from. Mr. Frederick?
Maybe I'm missing the whole point here. When we were advised last week what this group would do, all I heard was going to develop a toolbox.
This group is not going
And
to
so
develop
now if
a
they're going to
toolbox.
develop
We
a
need to
toolbox-
develop a group to develop the toolbox. This group presented you what it would look like to have the Economic Development Committee. That's it.
Then they should be able to do the toolbox in a year.
They're
Now,
not
if the-
interested in it. This ad hoc group that did this is not interested in the
I'm not
Economic
interested in
Development
the ad,
toolbox.
I'm not interested in the ad hoc group. This Economic Development Committee, the presentation at our last meeting was to develop a toolbox. That's what they kept saying. Is that not what you're supposed to do as your first step?
That will be one of them, yes, sir. So to your
That's why
point,
I'm talking about
time-
1 year, develop a toolbox.
That's-
You're not
that's-
going out and try to sell.
I have no problem with
No,
whatever timeline you decide. It's whatever timeline you want
Because
to
after the
provide to us.
toolbox, what would be the next strategy?
Well, we would be looking at specific properties.
Thank you,
okay?
that's step next,
So-
that's good, I think that's fine.
Some of
No,
the
I'm saying, I
stuff-
think that you're missing the point though about the people that are right now putting this together. I think that's where we're kind of not seeing the same. This group isn't interested in putting the toolbox together. They just want.
Which group?
Mr. Jenkins and
The
Mr.
ad-
Weens, the
yeah,
guys
I'm
that
referring to the
presented.
ad hoc group.
They're done after they bring recommendations to you of who you think should be on the board. They're gone. Then Mr. Lake and that board will work on the toolbox. That's all I'm saying. I think that's where we were a little confused, so. Seeing none, any more discussion on this? Ms. Tinneberry?
Just that, after looking over the list, I see you have a representative from the agricultural community. I agree with that, but I still think one more person, which is a citizen of Temperance, someplace in Temperance, needs to, just an everyday citizen. No college degree, no business, no whatever. I think we need to hear from that aspect of Temperance as well.
One of the people that might volunteer would fit one of these and also be a citizen. We don't know yet.
We don't know that. Right.
I agree, we ought to have somebody on it, but maybe one of these would be. Don't know.
And that's
I
why
don't
my
even know
thought
who the
was, I
ad
think
hoc
we've
group is
made
that
clear
drafted
what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Now, go forward and get it done and come back and give us a list we can vote up or down on, or individually, or however the board proceeds to do it, but
If you would allow me just to be the clearinghouse, so we make sure we don't have duplications, then I'm happy to do that for you if you wish.
Mr. Francis?
And when we're seeking volunteers, we ought to let them know what the job is. This is the goal, and I don't know if we have that in concise language. Maybe part of it's in here, but maybe they ought to come back with some purpose statement, or what's the charge that this board is giving them?
the only area where I would say this is a bit different is traditionally the people that you're going to be looking to, I would think, fill seats on this board already clearly know what steps and roles are going to be filled on the board. We're not going out to teachers and doctors and lawyers and firefighters and saying, hey, we want you to be on an economic development board. We're going to those in the real estate, the title community, the business community, infrastructure, industrial, and we're saying, will you serve Bedford to make us ready and viable to businesses as they're looking? From that standpoint, I think it's a bit self-explanatory. Maybe if there was a one or two paragraph to explain so that citizens could apply, could put their name in the hat, I think that makes total sense, and I think there ought to be a window for that. But I think by and large, those that are going to be asked to serve on this board already have a good idea of what's coming and what they're volunteering for. Mr. Supervisor, we entertain a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that Supervisor Peroni, in conjunction with Tim Lake via his role with Monroe County Economic Development and his contract with Bedford, in conjunction with the ad hoc committee, establish a economic development committee to bring back to this board for vote for final approval to move forward with the activities of economic development within Bedford.
Second.
I'll second
Motion
that.
supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion?
Oh,
Mr. Clemens, did you want to make anything on timing or wait till we vote on what they bring back to us?
I was prepared to wait till they bring back to us. But
I'm fine with
I'm
that.
open to a friendly amendment if you want to do
I'm
that.
fine with that either way.
Okay, sir. I'll leave it as is.
Mr. Francis?
You know, when a board creates a committee, they have to give them a charge. And they have to, this is going to be an Open Meetings Act issue, so that board needs to keep minutes, whoever the people are, for a public record. We're a long way from that, but maybe when we create that, we have it written so that they all know that.
Or that would absolutely be the first responsibility of that newly formed committee, for sure.
And we could write descriptions too for the board too, I mean, so.
Because anybody from that committee could volunteer to be appointed more of the secretarial function.
Yeah.
And who knows, that might be a citizen that really wants to be involved right there to keep that all together and be the secretary as part of that committee.
I like the idea of putting this thing together in a package so that we can really understand, one, what it's going to do, what its objectives are, what its goals are, and then we can kind of, as a board, make a decision on how this goes forward. But I still like 1 year, but I'll use your motion.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Richburger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Tim, thank you for being here tonight, appreciate it. Item 8A, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Ms. Hertzberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $15,766.37. Fire District, $12,352.30. Police Fund, $678.71. Park Fund, $27,877.41. Transit System Fund, $23,953. Library Fund, $1,538.16. Water Revenue Fund, $5,640. Springbrook Debt Fund, $3,965.66. Mildred Drive SAD, $2,610.63. Downtown Development Authority, $24,429.36. Sewer O&M Fund, $375.83. Trust and Agency Fund, $32,003.62, for a grand total of $151,191.05.
Support.
Motion supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion? Could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, request for Apple Creek Estates Plan Unit Development, conceptual preliminary approval on portion of parcel number 5802-033-049-00, otherwise known as 6695 Jackman Road. Mr. Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This project is in the conceptual preliminary approval phase simply because there's been 6 or 7 or 8 different designs that were necessary to accommodate wetlands, accommodate cul-de-sacs, and a number of other issues. The Planning Commission has looked at it, has asked a lot of questions, have received sufficient answers to the questions. So, Mr. Supervisor, I move that the Township Board, on a recommendation of the Planning Commission, grant approval of the request of White Diamond Development for a preliminary planned unit development plan for a 20-unit condominium project on parcel number 5802-033-049-00 at 6695 Jackman Road, contingent upon obtaining all necessary and required approvals of the reviewing agencies, including those issues identified in the Monroe County Drain Commission letter of 5/7/18, the Monroe County Road Commission letter of 5/15/18, Manick and Smith Group letter of 5/14/18, the Bedford Township Fire Department letter of 5/2/18, granting a variance of the required depth to which ratio for lots number 11 through 18, granting a waiver of the 100-foot perimeter setback as the developer has provided a 65-foot setback, and prior to any final PUD plan consideration, the developer shall submit for approval by council any and all necessary PUD and condominium documents, enter into a special assessment district for street lighting between the township and the developer, submit all color schemes, building materials, and building renderings for approval, assure the PUD plan shall be in compliance with the requirements of MDEQ respecting wetlands on the parcel, submit landscaping and buffering plans for approval, and establish a condominium association for the project.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thank you, guys. Item 8C, request for approval to use the Manick and Smith Group proposal to provide
Good change.
ArcGIS training assistance. Ms. Hirschberger?
Did everyone see the 8C revised? Okay. So Dennis has submitted a proposal to help with the GIS training for Jody Rector, coupled with initial training conducted for Jody previously in her additional training sessions. He believes he'll be able to help with the base maps and the updating. This is something we need right away, and that's why we went to Dennis, because we knew he has the knowledge of this. But our census is being updated right now with a deadline of July 11th. So we need to get this info in there quickly. Dennis is willing to do it at $50 per hour with the total not to exceed $900.
Any discussion? Ms. Tinnevery?
I'd just like to ask what happened. Dennis was doing this, the census.
He's been working on the census, but he wasn't doing the GIS. He's just been helping us.
No, I understand that, but I mean, I thought that he had been hired to, I remember a meeting where we voted to hire him.
To
Anyway.
help out with the census, but not to train her with the GIS.
No, exactly.
Yes,
No, I agree
yes.
with the training. The only other thing I would like to add is, as a board member, I would like to see some indication of how, beyond what Dennis can help her with, can get some certified training to be able to, this whole thing that came about with Manick and Smith, I thought was kind of a waste of money, because at the end, she wouldn't have any certification. I'd like to see her be able to take some courses, whether it's college courses or what, or we've trained assessors. I think we can train in this GIS, because it's the thing of the future, and we're gonna have to have somebody that knows, you know, grows with it as well. So I'd like to see some, maybe other training that she can get beyond Dennis to become certified in this, so that we're not doing this all over again.
That's the issue to begin with. The only way you can get certified in this is if you go take prerequisites at a college and get some kind of a degree that carries with this. She is going online and taking classes, and I do have one of her 6 weeks completion certifications on it. Otherwise, besides Madigan Smith being able to help her, the only other thing we can do is send her to California, Las Vegas, places that they give this training. It's an eight-day course, and it's quite expensive.
They do have training such as this online, where you can obtain certification.
Right, and that's what she's been doing, but she can't find any place to teach her the base map, and that's what she's looking for. If someone would teach her the base map, then she'd be good
Isn't
to
that
go
what
on.
Dennis is gonna
Yes.
do? Okay,
Yes,
so that's what I mean, after that,
right. As soon as she can get the base map, then she can take these other courses
Okay.
and get,
It's all trained backwards.
yeah. The training is backwards for some
So
reason.
it's-
that's what millennials do.
So Dennis will be able to
Don't point
to
at
get her
me, I'm
that.
just 1 year above it.
1 year above it.
I'm 1 year over it, so.
Sorry, what?
Don't be laughing back there, Chief, come on.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so,
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve Dennis to work with Jody on the base map and training in the GIS at the hourly rate of $50 per hour, not to exceed $900.
Support.
okay, motion supported, discussion. I just want to thank Mr. Jenkins for all his help around here lately with these committees and just with, in planning. It's been very helpful, so thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Frederick?
Dennis put in the GIS system here before they even had one at the county. The county had a terrible time getting theirs started up and running, and Dennis was going 100 miles an hour. He is really skilled at this, so I think we're lucky that he's willing to use his abilities and his skills and knowledge to help us move forward.
Absolutely. Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 8D, request for approval for a decision regarding the bid received for the 2000 Ford Ranger. The bid's just too low at $700. You know, nobody could ever fault us for giving away their vehicles, I tell you that much, because we've started high, and we're down to, you know, the recommended bid at this point is $1,500, so I recommend we scrap the bid that came in and put it out there again for $1,500. And I think we should get it at that. If we don't get it, we just need to keep the daggum thing, because it's not worth getting rid of. So, I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to reduce the minimum bid on the 2000 Ford Ranger to $1,500.
Support.
Okay, motion supported, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Hey,
Another one. Don't we need to refuse the bid we did get?
I don't
Well,
think so. We
in
didn't meet
the,
minimum.
in the bid document, it says that we have the right to refuse any and all.
And
Why
have
don't-
we done that?
Why don't we
No.
make a motion to just do it? Ms. Tinnever, you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we refuse the bid from, Michael Entry of $700 on the 2000 Ford Ranger.
Second.
Okay, motion supported, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Francis. Item 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale. The freedom we have is still being paid for by our men and women who serve in our military, both at home and in lands far away. The 4th is not just about shooting fireworks, cooking out, and drinking beer. It's about remembering the hundreds of thousands of Americans who have sacrificed so much for the freedoms we enjoy. I hope we don't forget our freedoms and take them for granted. But there are still many Americans who are not free. That freedom can't be given by governments or armies. We have numerous Americans suffering from drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and other addictions that hold them hostage and captive and deprive them of the freedom that God wants His children to experience and enjoy. That freedom only comes in Jesus Christ. If we allow Him to set us free, then we are free indeed. You're probably wondering what this has to do with the 4th of July, or even this government meeting tonight. It has everything to do with both. We boldly proclaim, "In God we trust." It is printed on our money. It is the official motto of the United States, appears on the state flag of Florida, and has been written on money as early as 1864. Even the Republic of Nicaragua has it as mottos, "En Dios confiamos." To me, the 4th of July is remembering what this country was founded upon and what those who fought for our freedom truly believed. This country still needs to trust in God, and our citizens need to trust in the Lord Jesus Christ for their freedom. Like I've already said, freedom we experience in this country is being paid for every day. Freedom comes at a great price. The freedom we have in Jesus has been paid in full 2,000 years ago, not by governments or armies, but by one man, God's only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. That freedom came at the greatest cost of all, the death of God Himself. I say this today because this country gives me the freedom and the right to say it. And are we not blessed to have this opportunity to express our faith publicly and without fear? My 2 great-grandfathers, many times removed, fought with the South Carolina militia during a Revolutionary War over 242 years ago so that I could say what I just said. They and numerous others to this date have provided this freedom at great personal cost. I exercise this right tonight in their memory and their honor. 3,000 years ago, the psalmist penned these words, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." I pray that America will again put its trust in the Lord, and that God will bless this nation. I had the privilege of playing with some veterans here Saturday at the golf outing. It was really a blessing to be around men and women who serve. And it was nice to have that opportunity to see so many people who have given so much for this nation. I remember as a trooper, I hated working the 4th of July. It was one of those days that I knew that there was going to be somebody drinking too much and driving. I knew that there was going to be some kid who got in trouble using fireworks. And I always hated those days because I knew that there was going to be some people in this country that this would be the last 4th of July that they would ever see, because we're not really cognizant of other people. And we need to do that. Here's a public service announcement that's free. Don't drink and drive. Don't be foolish with fireworks. Be respectful with the properties of other people. I always hated it when I got a call and somebody said, you know, there's somebody shooting fireworks over my house and they're landing on my roof. Well, they're shooting fireworks and they're landing in my boat. You know, we have the responsibility to respect one another. I think somebody once said that here, that we don't have to like each other, but we have to respect one another. And I hope that the 4th of July is safe for everyone, and that we use our freedom here not just to be free, but also to respect the rights of others. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on to board. Oh, come on up. Come on up. You got to come on up and state your name and address.
Paula, and I'm on Jackman Road, just down the street here. I have comments.
What was your last name, ma'am?
Paula.
You have to state your name, full name and
Feldman.
address. So for the
Paula
record.
Feldman, 7120 Jackman.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I have comments that connect to The new business 8B, which refers to the wetlands. Wetlands protect the water quality. They're called the most biologically productive ecosystems in our Great Lakes watershed. Wetlands are a significant factor in the health and existence of natural resources of the state. Wetlands also provide benefits which they help with the flood and storm control by hydrological absorption and storage capacity of wetlands. Just these few, there are many more that connect us to reconsidering or looking deeper into, especially with the DEQ, the proposal on 6695 Jackman Road development of Apple Creek. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Ms. Keene, before you start, I'm going to ask you to direct your comments to the chair, please. Thank you.
Who am I supposed to be talking to? I haven't
The chair.
addressed anybody other than the board. Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. I don't participate in starting rumors, but if I hear something, I strive to find and disclose the facts. Odd that the fire stations were brought up, and I did mention this at the last meeting. I too heard that a township official was wanting to close District 1 station. I voiced my concerns, did some digging, especially given the statements in the newsletter where it says Local 55 greatly lowered the cost of repairing that station. Now here's some facts per documented records. In January of 2017, the fire inspector inspected that building and proposed with his educational judgment as to how to fix it. The supervisor canceled that and chose to call in his own people. Additionally, there was more repairs that needed to be made, and from what I can see, the union was Gertzweiler, and the person who was paid, so not retired, but maybe got a discount, was a John Perone, and it was approved by our supervisor,
He was not
Mr.
paid. The
Perone.
company was paid.
Then
Henry
we had,
Gertzweiler.
so that took care of District 1, and my concern with that is that the township inspector was not even informed of all this. And we didn't really get aggressive with putting out our bids like we want to do for other things. We've got to get them out there so that people take this on. Yet, this building is owned by the township, and it is a historic building. So it would be my take that before we make the Lewis and Temperance intersection pretty, that we do an acceptable repair of District 1 for the firemen. They deserve to have a functioning, not just a slightly repaired fix to that. As to assessing, each of those individuals should be out in the field doing field work. And from what I can best hear over the last couple of meetings, if there's to be anybody hired, it sounds like we need to really give the planning department a full house. They're the ones that are going to need to be working with this EDC group. As far as postings for meetings, I would like to see if we could get these postings put onto the website under the thing that says the bulletin board, so that people can be best informed as to these meetings, these open meetings that need to be held. And lastly, and not leastly, for those of you that don't get the Monroe News, in Sunday's paper, there was a comment regarding the people who are claiming to be the advocates, the brain children behind the development at the Lewis Avenue and Temperance Road intersection. And I'm here to refute that. I can give you facts and figures that this was not their brainchild. And those of us that have been involved in that are very upset with that. And Pearl Albert Green has rolled over in her grave because this was not their brainchild. So you will recall that the Temperance Action Committee was fired, and our stuff has not been allowed to be documented, and part of that came in with the falling of the EDC. So I just want to go on record with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to clear up a quick rumor because I don't like it when rumors are said. The fire station, when the roof caved in almost a foot, I was called by the fire inspector and I went out there immediately. We had a company out there out of town called Belfour. I said, we don't need you. We're going to call a local company to do this emergency repair, which was put 2x6s up just to stable it until we get an immediate fixed. At that point, we got with our engineers. I had our township building inspector out there on day one. And after that, we brought it to the board with suggestions, and the suggestions were up to $120,000 for options to fix this fire station, okay? We didn't get any bids for it. So at that point, okay, the easiest fix was to put poles in and jack it up level. So I called Henry Gertzweiler, a company that's a reputed company, but that can do this work, okay? And I got 4 volunteer iron workers retired out of the township for free, okay? Henry Gertzweiler sent my brother, John Peroni, who is a foreman for Henry Gertzweiler, who lives 0.3 miles away, to the job. He did the job in 5 days, and they were gone. So the job was done for right around $8,000, and it was a temporary fix until we know the future needs of that building, which is, are they gonna put another story on it for sleeping quarters? Okay, there's been a lot of discussions right now. We're not gonna do a $50,000 fix, okay, like she is suggesting, when we don't know the future of the building. And when I say future, I don't mean tearing down the building. So that's the facts. Sometimes people like to leave out a lot of the facts. So comments, any more comments from the public? Seeing none. Mr. Clements?
Mr. Supervisor, I want to circle back to the economic development, and I think what Mr. Francis said and what Mr. Frederick said, I would just encourage you that when you come back with that information, that if there is some type of brief overview about the committee, its objectives, its goals, I think it would be very helpful for this board to be able to move quickly and swiftly on that. So just an encouragement.
We'll be very transparent.
All right, I appreciate that. I also wanted to wish everybody a happy 4th. I could not agree more with the comments from the podium that the 4th starts off as a very happy day for some, and it can be a very tragic day when you go too far. So my encouragement is grab your loved ones, stay home, have a great time, but be careful on our roadways. Also want to encourage people to be very careful with fireworks, excuse me. We've had a lot of fires in Bedford. Our resources are stretched. They're doing a phenomenal job. But while it goes up and it makes a loud sound, it looks cool, it also can fall down and burn something. So I would just encourage everybody to be mindful of that. Lastly, I have very good neighbors, and they're some younger guys, and they came over last summer and said, Mr. Clements, we're going to have a party on Saturday night. It's probably going to run really late. Is that okay with you? And I thought that's kind of fascinating that these, 20 and 19-year-olds would come over and ask for my permission. I said, well, it's absolutely fine. They said, well, we didn't want you to be put out. We know you have small kids. We just wanted to make sure it was okay before we did it. And I was really taken back by that. I have a friend of mine I was on the phone with yesterday who struggles with pretty severe PTSD, and he is really nervous about tomorrow. And so it just dawned on me the connectivity of those two stories is fireworks are fun, and I get it. But be mindful. If you have a neighbor and you have any inclination that they're struggling with PTSD, how tragic is it that someone goes and serves our country and is prepared to lay down their life in defense of the freedom that we celebrate, and yet we might accidentally or even intentionally be disrespectful and not appreciate that person's feelings or sentiments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Logan had an eloquent presentation with respect to something I'm going to talk about too. I serve on the Veterans of Foreign Wars Honor Guard. At the funerals of veterans, we provide the last salute. We have been burying the few remaining World War II people, the last of the great wars, several from Korea, and I don't understand how they fought in the wintertime over there because it was colder than hell. those from Iraq, those from Afghanistan, and from other areas where they have given their all. It is a poignant and quiet ceremony, but it has great respect for what they have done for us in terms of our independence. And the families are greatly appreciative of the folding of the flag and the presentation of the flag to the next of kin, Diwali and taps. They always come to us and say thank you for what you've done, but we are so proud to do that. So tonight and tomorrow, think about the veterans who are serving today, because they are giving us the independence of thought and deeds that we participate in. I think that we sometimes forget them. Maybe just a moment of thought, and you look at the flag tomorrow, give it a salute. Thank you very much.
Ms. Tenneberry?
Well, I would like to thank Logan for his message. I totally agree with every word he said. And I also want to thank you for your boldness. Appreciate that. I'd also want to thank Ron Whipple. I certainly hope that we will be doing more than just this, accepting his letter of retirement. Mr. Whipple began it in Bedford in 1973. He left us for a little while to lead up the Frenchtown Fire Department, but he came back as our fire inspector, and he served as a firefighter, fire inspector, and fire marshal for Bedford. And we haven't always agreed. He and I both know that. But I respect the fact that he has given so many hours and so much time and sacrifice of his family, and even putting his life on the line to fight fires and to handle rescues for the citizens of Bedford Township. I just appreciate that. I thank him so much. Firefighters are men and women who basically operate in the background and don't get all of the accolades that they deserve, and I certainly think that someone who has served not just Bedford Township, but Frenchtown Township for 45 years in the fire services certainly deserves our respect and our gratitude for the time given. And then finally, I'm not into fireworks or any of that celebrating, but I do appreciate and want to thank our founding fathers for the Constitution that they gave us. It sets us apart from every other country in the world. There's a lot of disagreement and disgruntlement nowadays, but I just don't understand people who cannot set aside their political differences and see what a great, great nation we live in. Bob taught government for many, many years, and one of the things that's hardest to get across to young people growing up that don't have any involvement in what the Constitution, they've lived under their parents' roof forever, and yet to understand the freedoms that we have with our Constitution and the men and women who have fought to protect that. I just think that we need to think a great deal tomorrow about what that day is all about, and it certainly is about more than firecrackers. Thank you. Done.
Thank you. Mr. Steiner?
Well, without repeating everything that's been said with the comments, pretty much agree with everything that's been said about what tomorrow really means to all of us, and we all do need to reflect on the real meaning. You know, it's funny, it's not even just Independence Day. There's a lot of things in this country that we fail to remember at all times. what that holiday is really for, what it's all about, and what it means to all of us, and why we're all here to have the freedoms we have today. So, again, I agree with the comments that have been made so far, so no sense in repeating them. The one thing I will say is it's hot out there, it's dry. Do everything you can, not only as I've heard, respect your neighbors, but let's give our fire department a break. If you're going to do something with fireworks, be prepared and do it safely. Do it in an area that you are not likely to create a fire or an issue where you have to call the fire department. They're the best at what they do, and the chief gives us weekly updates and reports on some of the challenges that they face, but you know what? Every challenge they have hit, sure, I'm sure they don't all go perfectly, but the commitment we have out of the people that he's got on his fire department and team, I think it's second to none. But we don't want to put their lives in jeopardy either because of way too many fires, and all of a sudden we're short-staffed and we're trying to call, you know, other townships, surrounding areas for mutual aid. Just don't want to do that. So again, be respectful of your neighbors, and let's keep them safe and keep your firefighters safe as well. And happy Independence Day tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Well, I too agree with everything that's been said, especially what Mr. Tisdale said. As Nancy mentioned, everything that he said, I agree with too. And I'm proud to say it. Respect him for saying it. The only new thing that no one's mentioned yet is the tax bills were mailed out. I'm sure everyone's happy to know that. Please don't use them to light your fireworks. I hope that everyone in this room and is listening can set aside their political differences if they would have any, and I'm sure they have, and help us celebrate the nation. We all benefit from that, and I just can't get it through my head why the politicalization of everything is happening now. For what purpose? Everyone has a right to his own opinion. We need to respect that. I think people in this group understand that. We've talked about it before, but there are others around that just, we're speeding downhill toward a very bad end. It's almost anarchy, and we need to stop that before it gets that far. Well, I got to get off my soapbox now, so I'll stop. Happy 4th.
Ms. Hirschberger?
July 9th will be the last day to register to vote, so if you are not registered and you want to vote in the primary election in August, please come into my office, or you can do it online, but you need to be registered by July 9th. If you have not received your absentee ballot and you would like to apply for one, please come into the Township Hall to the Clerk's Department. We can help you with that. Remember, this is a primary election. You can only vote one party. There are 3 parties this time on the primary ballot, but you can only vote one party. If you believe that you have turned in your absentee ballot and you have crossed parties, please come in and we can get you a new ballot. If you don't, then only the proposals that you have voted on will count. And lastly, we still have mosquito pellets. I know it's really hot, but we're supposed to be getting some more rain, so come in and get your pellets. All you need is proof of township residency. And happy 4th of July to everyone.
Okay, just wanted a few things, keep it short. Obviously, I agree with everything you said, Logan, and I'm not gonna keep this meeting going any longer than we have to, but I really appreciate your words tonight. We had a great meeting with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. They walked downtown Temperance, and they are looking at what programs might work in the area for housing. It was a great meeting. I just wanted to say the Bedford Bike Cruise was launched. It was very successful. I rode in it with my kids and went through the neighborhoods, and the police escorted us. It was a great time, and we look forward to, I think we had 20 or 30 people that did the 30-mile one that went all the way to Luna Pier and on that hot day. And so it was a great day, but it was it's something that I'm passionate about, and Mr. Pryor is. He put a lot of time into it, working with Team McCog, and it's a great event. We need to have events like this as a township. It's very important. And in the future, I want this board to really take more importance to the farmers market that we have, to really build it up, because it's key. It's things like that are key in the townships, and that's been very successful. It's still going after almost 5.5 years now or something like that. I think this is our 5th season, but we've got to keep stuff like that going. And I think it's really important, this township, to back stuff like that. So I'll be talking about it more in the future. I want to thank Ron Whipple as well. I've personally thanked him a couple of times, but he's a great guy, and I hope he has a great retirement. So Ron, enjoy. I want to thank the park board for a great fireworks display, and the company that did it. We had to delay, or they had to delay it a day, but it still was a great display, and it always is. I do want to comment on all the flags that have been put out in the township by the Veterans Committee. The comments that have come in and the phone calls has just been unreal. I mean, you see all the flags out of the township hall, they just showed up here one day. But it's been really cool, and I really appreciate that. We did have our first meeting on the roundabout. Mr. Francis was in attendance. The next step right now is for Manick and Smith to come here and give us the cost that it would be for them to look into what it would cost for them to do, what's the word I'm looking for? To give us an estimate on the cost for them to do the study on what the project might cost. I think that's what it was. So that'll be coming, I would think, in the near future. And I want to read a quick email that I had sent to the Temperance Action Committee this week, looking to partner with them. So first, I would like to thank all the volunteers who have helped Temperance over the years with various projects and events that have taken place. At this time, as you may or not know, Bedford Township has received a transportation alternative grant for downtown Temperance for improvements and beautification. I know over the years, Temperance Action Committee worked hard to raise money for beautification and to construct a Veterans Monument. For whatever reason, the money has not been spent. However, this would be a great opportunity for your board if you would like to participate with money that you have raised for downtown. The citizens of Temperance would welcome your financial contribution and for your board to be part of the project. In addition, those that are businesses, owners in the Temperance and would like to participate, we would value your comments as well. If you have questions about the project, would you like to set up a meeting to see the grant documentation, feel free to call me. I just wanted to let everybody know that was the email that it did send a TAC. I've offered my hand to some of the people in that committee to work with me. And, you know, so I just wanted to be known that we want to work together. This township is stronger if we work together and not constantly bicker and fight and start rumors and all that. It doesn't help. It doesn't help the community, so we need to work together. And so that's one of the reasons I sent that letter out, is to offer my hand again in a partnership. We need to work together. Other than that, I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And Ms. Tinberg?
Yeah, the roundabout, I thought that was a road commission project paid for by a grant.
It is.
So why are we putting any money in it?
Go ahead, Mr. Francis.
The grant is only for construction. For this to work, you're going to have to buy some real estate to put it on, because it's not going to be just in the road right away. And that's what Manick and Smith is coming up with, is some design concepts, how it might look and how much property we might need to buy. We have to fund that. The grant is only for construction, period.
Can we talk about this in another meeting? Because the road commission should be buying, it's going to be road right-of-way. It's road right-of-way,
Well,
whatever.
just so you know,
we
the
buy.
grants for roughly, what was it, Paul, just under 600?
Okay,
They're guessing the project total with property, everything is gonna be around 850. They're willing to pitch in half of that over and above amount. So the township may have to come up with 120. That's why Manick and Smith has to do the study, and that's why they have to come to us to see if we want to move forward with the study. So that was the meeting we were at. It was the first meeting, and we're waiting on Manick and Smith to come back for something we could put on the agenda for the board to see. And the reason, there's just not much there yet.
I know, but before that happens, I would like to see the road commission here answering why they're not taking care of that. Why are we buying road right-of-way, basically? I need an answer to that, so, okay.
I agree with you, Ms. Denbury. We've already anteed up a lot for roads, and our general fund balance, I'm not so sure that it can take another shot.
We'll talk about it
So we'll
another
talk
meeting. This is a 2020 project, it's 2 years out, we have plenty of time to plan for it, plenty of time for discussion, so I don't want to get into the weeds here. We'll get you guys some answers and some information, so.
Before we
No,
spend money.
Before we spend money, this board's going to approve anything with money. That's why it's Manica Smith is coming to this meeting, to propose what it's going to cost to do a study. What's that, Mr. Frederick?
No, that's all right.
Okay, if no further comments, we stand adjourned.